I've always been skeptical of leaks, and because of that, I was, honestly, quite surprised to see that at least some of the Fire Emblem leaks this year turned out to be entirely true with regard to the next mainline entry in the series. I'm still not taking this as confirmation of a genealogy remake, even though that was also part of the leak, just because I want official confirmation before I start getting hyped, but hey, Sigurd and possibly Leaf are here, so that's a small step forward for Youthdraw fans, right? It's been impossible this past week not to see some of the negative reactions to Fire Emblem Engage, that it's not at all what people expected or wanted from the franchise, and how it looks like a lazy cash grab. I can sympathize with some of those reactions, but at the same time, I'm not all that surprised that we've come to this. Engage is, essentially, the third iteration of the direction that Intelligent Systems has been steering Fire Emblem in for the last decade. First came Awakening, where there's a bunch of DLC where you can recruit old characters and play on old maps, and also there's a beach map and a hot springs map with a bunch of pure fan service, and also the story has no real stakes and nobody ever stays dead, because the most important thing is that you get to sleep with the opposite gendered anime chess piece of your choice. Following closely in Awakening's footsteps was Heroes, where you can play on shrunken versions of old maps and gamble on the chance to recruit old characters, and also every month there's some kind of themed seasonal episode with a bunch of pure fan service, and also the story has no real stakes and no one ever stays dead, because the most important thing is that you get to wail for your favorite busty waifus. And also men are there sometimes. Seriously, IS, this is your idea of a bull daddy? Lame. Now we have Engage, bringing everything full circle by taking IS's vision for Fire Emblem back into a mainline title. It's not clear yet if Engage will include gacha elements, but even if it doesn't, I fully expect Heroes to introduce a ton of tie-in content for all of 2023 and possibly beyond. So even if you're not wailing on old heroes in Engage, you'll be able to wail on updated versions of them in the mobile game. That all sounds rather uninspired, and possibly even predatory depending on the extent to which Engage leans into the gacha mechanism, and I can understand those concerns, as I can also understand people who may be frustrated because this game looks to have taken nothing from the direction of Three Houses. I've read several potential explanations for that, like for example that Engage was intended to be released in 2020 for the series' 30th anniversary and so was in development alongside Three Houses but was delayed due to the pandemic, or that Three Houses and Three Hopes are collaborations with Koei Tecmo and most of what makes them stand out from other Fire Emblem games is more Koei's doing. But I can't say definitively one way or the other why Engage is the way it is, short of my observation that it appears to be very much of a piece with Awakening and Heroes, with more straightforward storytelling and, yes, more obvious fan service. For my part, though, I'm looking at Engage a lot more kindly than I ever looked at Awakening, and I have to attribute that to what's been going on with this series for the last 6 years or so. I watched fans eviscerate Fates for being too ambitious for its own good, and for inheriting Awakening's explicit fan service mentality, which doesn't mesh well with the attempt at a more serious story with heavy stakes. I also became embroiled in the years of discourse over Three Houses and now Three Hopes, with the fandom breaking itself into factions determined to tell everyone else how their fave is so much better than everyone else, not just as a character, but in a real-world political sense. In light of that, it's probably little wonder that I'm thrilled at the prospect of a mainline Fire Emblem without in-game factions or route splits, both to curtail some of that chaotic fandom drama and to sidestep a major problem with all of those multi-route games. Namely that the developers had to split their time, money, and vision across multiple stories and then cut corners when they fell short. Engage's story at the moment looks like your standard Fire Emblem plot through and through, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'd describe 5 of the 7 routes of Fates and Three Houses as series standard plots, but some of them are quite good, including my favorite Three Houses route. IS has been telling variations of this one story since 1990. It'd be kind of embarrassing if they hadn't gotten good at it by now. And while this is a comparatively minor point, I'm lightly optimistic that Engage will not replicate one of my biggest issues with Awakening. namely how jokey and regressive it can be on the subject of same-sex attraction, even compared to some of the older games in the series. Since then, we've had 2 mainline titles and 1 spin-off that demonstrate that these writers still know how to deliver meaningful, resonating queer subtext, something that I very much hope carries forward into Engage. Oh, and Avatar same-sex S-ranks are a thing now, but there's a 95% chance I'm not going to care about those if they show up in the new game. I've already said my piece on that matter several times. Overall, I'd say I'm quietly hyped for Engage. It's probably not going to turn out to be a personal favorite, but as long as it's fun and not actively predatory with the way it manages its content, I'll be satisfied. It's too early to tell at this point, but I think a major indicator for the quality of this game will be just how much it leans on the legacy characters. If they're effectively the equivalent of a stat-boosting item or a battalion, and the characters and story of Engage proper take center stage, I think that'll be a good sign. Either way, I'm going to be keeping up with this game over the next 4 months, and I'll definitely be covering it in some form on release as well. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you're interested in Engage and other Fire Emblem content, and I'd also love it if you like the video and tell me in the comments what you thought of the trailer and how you're feeling about Engage. Thank you all so much for watching. Au revoir!